Welcome back to the Pylon Cam Podcast, episode 3. I am your host, Mike Frisella. It is a beautiful sunny day here in North Carolina, and we got a lot to get into today. Got a lot of stuff to go through, so let's go ahead into it. Recap. We're going to recap week 2 of the preseason. I'll give you an update on how my journey back to New Jersey went. Spoiler alert. Flag football team won the championship. We went 11-0. Your boy had a 20 touchdown season to top it off. It was a good run, and it was a good trip. Got to see a bunch of friends, got to see my family, got to bring home my Lombardi. But yeah, got a lot of stuff to get into. So let's kick it off with the Pats-Eagles game from Thursday night. First thing, y'all know me, Pats first. Both QBs look good. Mac Jones continues to impress, and the media is starting to pick up on it because they've set the bar so low for him. So, I mean, from my point of view, he's doing everything I expected him to do. People like to overthink things. People like to make stories. Mac Jones is doing everything that, if you watched him play at Alabama, he was supposed to do. He's doing everything Bill Belichick wants him to do. Cam Newton really hurt his chances to win the starting job by the COVID debacle he's going through. I think he went to get like a COVID check out of an NFL permitted thing. So he's going to miss a lot of reps, a lot of crucial reps. I really don't. So we're going to talk through QB competitions in this episode, and I really don't think there are any. I think there's one real one that actually ended today, but we'll get to it when we get to it. I don't think that there's any competition between Cam Newton and Mac Jones. Cam Newton should have been the starter just so Mac Jones can, adjust to the league a little bit instead of getting thrown in there, because he doesn't need to play right now. He doesn't need to carry a franchise right now. He doesn't have to do any of that. So there's no reason for Mac Jones to start. There's no reason to even have a, quote, competition. So, but to focus on the game, Pats are making a real case to be the best running team in football. I think that they will finish. I would predict that they would finish as the number 1 rushing offense, especially if Cam Newton plays, because I think the Ravens are going to try to throw the ball more. We've talked about that a bunch the past 2 episodes. But Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, and J.J. Taylor are making a very good case as to why. Ramondre Stevenson had 15 attempts, 66 yards, 2 touchdowns. J.J. Taylor had 12 attempts, 93 yards, and a touchdown. And Damian Harris had 6 attempts, 14 yards, and a touchdown. That's all I want to say about them. Eagles, they looked horrible. They just looked bad. One bright spot is Kenneth Gainwell. I think Nick Sirianni is going to try to use him any way he can. So that's a good look for fantasy. You want to see him in the passing game, especially as a running back in PPR leagues. But I liked him a lot coming out of the draft. I liked him a lot going to the Eagles because I don't believe in Miles Sanders. I think Miles Sanders is a phenomenal running back. The Eagles just can't make him work, and he's hurt all the time. And I think that people worrying about Devontae Smith already are kind of like off the rocker. Like, yeah, he had a few drops, but it was his first NFL game ever. But no need to worry about him. Next game. Chiefs, Cardinals, and Bengals, Washington. So Chad, anything is possible. Henny went 6 for 8, 82 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. I mean, who cares? But for fantasy, I think that definitely keep an eye on this backfield, because Clyde Edwards-Helaire is no stranger to injuries. He did play hurt a lot last season, but he's someone who I think they're going to try to, have a strong number 2. So for fantasy, there's a huge case as to who that's going to be. So I'd keep an eye on that. And for the Cardinals, I mean, James Conner is terrible. I never liked James Conner. I never thought he was good. Chase Edmonds didn't look good either. They don't really need a running back because Kyler Murray can do everything himself. He could throw the ball. He could run the ball. They don't need that. I mean, it would be nice because it helps you control the clock and you don't have to sacrifice your quarterback every time you're trying to run the ball. But Eno Benjamin looked really good as an RB2. I think it's going to be Chase Edmonds and then Eno Benjamin. And then I think they'll probably either trade, or I don't know what's going to happen to James Conner. He's going to get hurt. I mean, with his limited snap count, I guarantee you he'll get hurt. He gets hurt every single year. So yeah, I mean, that's all I want to say about that game. No real stories there or anything jumping off or jumping out at me. And then Bengals, I think there's a little bit more excitement. A lot of talk about Jamar Chase and his drops. But like Smitty, I don't think it matters. Like, it's his first game ever. He got targeted 3 times. He looked horrible. I'm going to be honest. He looked terrible, but he's still Jamar Chase. He still has all the intangibles. He'll get into his groove as the season progresses. But it's a big but because he might go to jail for this but. He is possibly getting hit with a domestic charge. So keep an eye on that storyline, especially for fantasy. Like, hey, this puts more. I mean, you'll never see this coming. This is no fault, but I did mention last week, I'm a big believer in background checks. You got to do background checks on your players. And this is someone that was this story came out through Instagram. So if it's on Instagram, there's definitely some breadcrumbs leading up to it. So I'll keep an eye on that. And that sucks. I love Jamar Chase. I really was looking forward to watching him. I hope he doesn't go to jail. Hey, but there's no excuse for hit. You never should hit a girl. Kids out there listening, you never hit a girl under any circumstances, especially if it's your baby mama. Going to Washington, Jarrett Patterson. This is someone who, like, I mean, Gibson is going to be the guy. I'm not saying, oh, Patterson might take the job. Like, no. But Gibson is 100% going to be the guy. But God forbid anything happens to Antonio Gibson. They are Ron Rivera is on the record saying they're going to give Gibson the lion's share of this offense. He is going to have the McCaffrey treatment in this offense. God forbid anything happens to him. Jarrett Patterson is going to pick up that workload. Player comp for me, similar to Alexander Madison. If you look in fantasy in the game logs, every time Dalvin Cook is out, Alexander Madison comes in and drops 20. He literally does not put up under 15 points. Jarrett Patterson reminds me of that same type of player. He had 16 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown in that contest. But to go to the Sunday games, we got a lot to get through, starting with the Ravens-Panthers. No real storyline for the Ravens. I mean, they dominated the Panthers. And I really should do a better job focusing on defensive players, and I will next week if we continue to do these recaps. But Panthers rookies look really, really good. Terrace Marshall looks really good, and Chuba Hubbard looks really good. I was very high on Chuba, especially coming out of the draft. He was my RB4. And I kind of just had a hunch about him. Like, I thought he was someone who he didn't play in 2020, but his 2019 stats were absolutely ridiculous. I wish I wrote them down for this episode, but he had 9 carries, 24 yards, but he had 2 catches for 29 yards. And Terrace Marshall. Here's a prediction I'm ready to put on the record after this game. And I told a bunch of my buddies about this last week. Shout out to Zach and Jackson Fordyce. I think Terrace Marshall finishes as the number 2 for the Panthers, no matter what. If Robbie Anderson's the one or DJ Moore's the one, Terrace Marshall will finish second in yards. You could book it. I promise you. This is like his second game where he has like under 5 catches for over 50 yards. I mean, the kid's a stud. But then let's talk about the Dolphins Falcons. I don't really have anything to say about Falcons. Chris Sims just looks like an idiot, even more so. His RB4, I think, for this class was Javian Hawkins, who got cut last week or yesterday. I mean, this is what I'm saying, dude. People who get paid, I think media networks pay these guys to talk. Like, they don't care about what they're saying. They just pay them to talk on the air. So just wanted to take that little shot at Chris Sims. But the Dolphins, Tua looked really good. And Tua, to me, like, I came into this season, I know it's only 1 year. Like, Tua only played 1 year and he only played a handful of starts. So I didn't want to be like, oh, you suck. But I kind of was leaning that way. But, Tua has kind of is starting to show me that I think even though he's playing against second stringers, being that he has a year of regular season games under his belt, he's kind of doing what I want him to do. And that is to just play well. And the thing that I'm really looking forward for from Tua is the deep ball, because his X factor coming out of college was his accuracy. A lot of people compared him to like, oh, he's the next lefty Drew Brees, whatever that means. But he needs to show Brian Flores in that organization that he can throw the ball accurately down the field, because you have someone like Jalen Waddle, you have Will Fuller, you have Devontae Parker. Fun fact, Devontae Parker, I think, came in third last season for contested catches, the most contested catches. If you take some pressure off of Devontae Parker and you have Tua hit him on those deep routes that he runs, Miami's offense is starting to look a lot better. And they're taking a committee approach to the backfield, which is what I want to talk about next. I've labeled this committee the pod, like a pod of dolphins. Whatever. Roast me in the comments. I don't care. But I think that Myles Gaskins, Malcolm Brown are going to be the 1-2. Jared Dokes is making a case for number 3. I mean, who cares? They will have a third guy, I think. But Gaskins and Brown both had a touchdown. Gaskins was the only one with the receiving touchdown. And I do think Malcolm Brown will lead the committee just based off of who's getting the most reps in these preseason games. It is Malcolm Brown over and over and over again. So stock for me going up for Malcolm Brown, someone to keep an eye on. Jalen Waddle did have an injury scare like pretty early into the game, but thank God he's fine. He was 3 for 21. So, I mean, do with that what you will. Bills, Bears, shout out to Mitch Trubisky. He came back into Chicago after being one of the most scrutinized players in the NFL. And, I mean, he played against second strings, but he balled out. So, shout out to Mr. Trubisky. He, was on the air saying, it feels good to be somewhere I'm wanted. And he definitely did not have that vibe in Chicago. I think we all knew he didn't have that vibe in Chicago. So, happy to see him happy. Hate to see someone just get absolutely pummeled for being in a dysfunctional organization. So, happy for Mr. Trubisky. Isaiah McKenzie played really well. He had 7 catches for 72 yards. And Marquez Stevenson, even though he got hurt, looked really good. And I was watching, like, just coincidentally, Stephon Diggs rookie highlights from the first preseason games he played in. And Marquez Stevenson is doing all the things Stephon Diggs did in those rookie games, or in those preseason games. I mean, Stephon Diggs in those games was a punt and kick return god. Marquez Stevenson, I think, averaged like 50 yards per return in this game this week. Keep an eye on him. I don't think he's going to win no spot or anything, but if Gabe Davis is out for, I think, 5 days, if Gabe Davis can't stay healthy, Marquez Stevenson is a candidate to come in for that that wide receiver 3 role. Keep an eye on him. Jets, Packers. Zach Wilson absolutely balled out. Granted, he hasn't played a first stringer on defense yet. He did ball out, though. So, shout out to Zach Wilson, 9 for 11, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looked good. He looked mobile. He definitely was progressing through his reads fast, it looked like. The one touchdown he had to Tyler Kroft, I think, looked right, looked left, seed down the middle, touchdown. And, like, that's a good sign. That is a very good sign for Zach Wilson. Next batch of Sunday games. If you're watching on YouTube, quick update. Quality of life updates are coming to this podcast for YouTube. I just subscribed to Canva, and I was like fooling around with OBS today, but I couldn't figure out how to, make it work and make my head bigger and see my notes on PowerPoint. So quality of life updates are coming. But back to the games. Vikings, Colts. Not really anything to say about this game. I mean, sorry, Vikings, Colts fans, but this was like one of those boring games ever. I think Sam Ehlinger definitely just lost the case for QB2. Not that it matters because Carson Wentz is coming back week 1, but Sam Ehlinger threw 2 picks. So Jacob Eason season. Titans, Bucks. If Derrick Henry gets hurt, this running game is shot. It's over. And I don't even mean like you can't fill Derrick Henry's shoes. Like they have no backup. Their best backup is Darrington Evans. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he's like out. I don't know what injury he has, but he's not. They couldn't. Every back they had that had over 10 yards or 10 touches did not come close to 5 yards per carry. Des Fitzpatrick looked really solid. This was someone I was very high on before the Julio trade. Then, obviously stock goes down, but he was 2 catches, 30 yards and a touchdown. So if anything happens to Julio will miss games. I don't label Julio as injury prone, but this is a playoff contending team. They're going to bench Julio in games that don't matter. Dez Fitzpatrick should pop in those games. I got to look at the schedule again and see like which games I think Dez Fitzpatrick will shine in, but keep an eye on Dez Fitzpatrick. Anthony Fursker finally sees some catches. He was a big waiver wire pickup in fantasy, big sleeper at the tight end spot. 2 catches, 15 yards, nothing to go crazy about. Talk about the Buccaneers. They have literally no backfield. I mean, Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette can play. They just did win a Super Bowl. But besides those two, like Keyshawn Vaughn struggling, the rest of that group struggling. One player that does keep catching my eye, though, is Tyler Johnson. And he was pegged as one of the best value picks from the 2020 draft. But he's like buried on that depth chart. And Jalen Darden. Jalen Darden did flash a lot that game. Steelers, Lions real quick. I would just keep an eye on this receiving core and the developing story of this Detroit backfield, because they're saying DeAndre Swift looks bad with conditioning problems. I've been a believer that he's been screwed up since that concussion he got last year. Adrian Peterson is on the record. This kid is not the same since that concussion. He's dealing with a groin injury. His dad is an absolute unit. I saw a video of his dad on Instagram. Dad's a bus, but that's neither here nor there. Keep an eye on the Lions backfield. Jamar Jefferson looks like a pretty serviceable backup. They have Jamal Williams, who we know is a serviceable backup from his time in Green Bay. And keep an eye on this receiving core, because Amon-Ra St. Brown, to me, is the only one in that receiving core who's a lock to play and get playing time. And he seems like he's going to be a slot god, like in PPR. So keep on him. Steelers. So Big Ben was almost perfect. 9 for 10, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns to my boy, who I have pegged as this generation's Jason Witten, and Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth popped off 2 catches, 19 yards, 2 touchdowns. He is a beast. And what I mean by beast is he is a very physical, smash mouth Steelers type player that they wanted. That's why they drafted him in the second. I said I was on the record episode 1 of Pylon Cam saying, will Pat Freiermuth justify not getting an offensive lineman in round 2? And they have their smash mouth running back. They have their smash mouth tight end. I really like the Steelers team. The Steelers team to me is gaining momentum, in my opinion. I'm not trying to get too hyped on them or any of these players or teams for that matter, because it is preseason and we aren't going to see we're not going to see any real flashes until week 3, because that's when they're going to, teams are going to play their starters for a half or more than just 2 series at a time. So, Najee Harris flashed in the passing game. He had 2 catches, 53 yards. One of them was like a little dump, but he turned on the Jets and took off. And I think that in fantasy, Kalen Ballage will be the RB2. So I pick him up if you have Najee in any leagues, just to have the handcuff. Then Colts, Vikings. Oh, just talked about them. My bad. Texans. Nothing to say about Texans, Cowboys. I mean, Cowboys are screwed without Dak. They just paid him a bag too. Like he's today's report is he's today, as in August 25th. He's playing in 7s. They play against the Bucs week 1, which is a very physical defense. In this NFC East, you cannot afford to lose a game early on or go on a losing streak because it's anybody's division. I think Dak's going to get hurt. I really do think Dak's going to get hurt. That's all I want to say about the Cowboys. Texans, Mark Ingram's going to lead that backfield. Phillip Lindsay is looking like garbage. It's going to be a committee between Phillip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, David Johnson. Go get stock in whoever you want. I think they're all going to suck. Sorry to those guys. They're NFL players, but in fantasy, they are going to be minimal value. Raiders, Rams, absolutely nothing to say about this game, except keep an eye on the Rams backfield, because they just traded today a 5th and 6th round pick to the Patriots for Sony Michel. So now you have Darrell Henderson, Sony Michel, Jake Funk, Xavier Jones. Who the hell is playing? I don't know. So keep an eye on it. And then we got Broncos Seahawks. Nothing to say about the Seahawks. One thing to say about Javonte Williams. I'm very upset he fumbled on the goal line. And I'm very upset that he hasn't scored yet because he should have 2 touchdowns now. He should have scored week 1, got called back for holding. Week 2, he fumbled. So he'll get there. That is someone, in my opinion, who will be good. He will be a good football player. If I'm wrong, I'll eat crow for it, but he will be a good football player. And then this is the other thing. I predicted that Teddy Bridgewater will be the starter for the Denver Broncos week 3. Today, he's officially the starter week 1. So Drew Lock has lost the starting job. RIP Drew Lock. Do better. Sunday games. Let's talk about the Niners, Chargers. Some 49ers fans and people in the media are like freaking out that Trey Lance isn't playing that good. And they're freaking out that Jimmy Garoppolo looked horrible. He did look horrible. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But, Trey Lance is so raw. He's just like a raw talent. Give him time. There's no QB competition here. That is just media. And the coaches have to respond when they say, oh, who's your starter for week 1? And they got to be like, well, I don't know. Like, that's not real. That is not a real thing, except unless you're the Denver Broncos. 49ers, Trey Lance looked better than week 1, but he's still nowhere near ready to play in an NFL game. So chill out. He's not starting week 1. He probably will come in because Jimmy Garoppolo looks like he has lost all confidence. Any confidence he had in himself, completely gone. I don't blame him. They drafted his replacement. He's injury prone. And Kyle Shanahan doesn't like him, frankly. He took the ball out of his hands in the Super Bowl and the playoffs. They don't like him. So if I was Jimmy G in a place like Mitch Trubisky, where I know everybody hates me and wants me gone and is just pissed they have me, like, I would not be confident either. Giants offensive line looked a lot better. Devontae Booker and Corey Clement still battling for that RB2 spot. Who cares? Like, Saquon Barkley is going to be there. And Gary Brightwell looked decent in the pass catching game. He had 3 catches, I think, on 3 targets, maybe 4. The Browns, they have insane depth at O-line and running back. Kevin Stefanski is building this team so that Baker Mayfield has to do as minimal as possible, which in my opinion is the right thing to do because he is their biggest hole on this weakness. I will say it every week if I have to. He is the biggest weakness on this team. For as long as Kevin Stefanski is tenured, the Browns will not be a bad football team. Last game we'll talk about. Oh, no. Yeah, no. I was about to say there's 2 QB competitions, but caught myself. Jaguars are a mess. They're an absolute mess. We were going to talk about Urban Meyer later in the show. We're going to talk about Urban Meyer later in the podcast. Marvin Jones and Trevor Lawrence's connection is the real thing. Shout out to Nick because my boy Nick, he called this. He said Marvin Jones and Trevor Lawrence have something special. And I do think that Trevor Lawrence, knowing he has that veteran receiver, being that DJ Chark is going into year 3 or 4, if I'm wrong on that, sorry. And Laviska Shenault, who's entering year 2. And then he has James Robinson, who's entering year 2. And they just lost Travis Etienne to an injury in this game. Marvin Jones stock. That's someone to look out for. Granted, he probably looks better because DJ Chark hasn't played. But still, that veteran presence is something Trevor's going to do. I mean, Trevor's a smart kid. He's going to lean on that pretty heavily. Saints. Jameis Winston will be the starter. This is never a competition. Taysom Hill has 4 professional starts at quarterback. What? Why Taysom Hill was ever in this conversation, I will never, ever, ever understand. Because here's the thing, right? Jameis Winston can play quarterback. Can he do anything else? Absolutely not. Taysom Hill can play quarterback, arguably. Can he do other things better? Yes. He could kick return. We've seen him block kicks. He could run the ball. He could catch the ball. He's an asset that, like, you are limiting at quarterback, right? So that was stupid, Sean Payton. That was dumb. And then, well, hold up. Before I disrespect Sean Payton like that, Sean Payton is about to make the playoffs with waiver wire wide receivers. Take that to the bank. Marquez Callaway is an absolute stud. This receiving core is going to be fine without Michael Thomas. Quite frankly, I think this gives them more grounds to trade Michael Thomas. Trade candidates I'm thinking of off the top of my head for Michael Thomas, the Colts, the Texans, if they want to ruin his career. And that's all I got for right now. That's the week 2 recap for the preseason. Fantasy players that caught my eye. We're not going to get too far in depth in this because I have a lot of other stuff I really want to talk about, and I didn't expect to take this about 20 minutes in, 25 minutes in. But fantasy players worth keeping an eye on. Mac Jones for the Patriots, Mac Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, JJ Taylor. For the Eagles, Kenneth Gainwell. For Washington, Jarrett Patterson. For the Chiefs, Byron Pringle will be the wide receiver 3. And there's this weird, Mecole Hardman did have a really good catch, but there's this weird idea that because Mecole Hardman is very fast, he's going to be a good receiver like Tyreek Hill. That's just dumb. Byron Pringle, to me, could be a better receiver, as in like receiving fundamentals, but he's not as fast as Mecole Hardman. So I keep an eye on Byron Pringle. He will be the wide receiver 3. He does have potential to move up to wide receiver 2. And then keep an eye on that backfield. And then Cardinals, I'd pick up Eno Benjamin if he's available. If not, sorry. Jets, Corey Davis did have a lot of targets. You definitely have to trade for him. I don't like Corey Davis. I never have liked Corey Davis because this is a quick analogy I'm going to use. If Jamar Chase, being the 5th overall pick, played 6 seasons as a number 1, and then let's just say he had Jerry Jeudy on the other side of him at some point in his career, just thinking of someone off the top of my head, and he never went over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns in a single season, he is a bust. Corey Davis is not an alpha wide receiver 1. He never has been. He never will be. You could make the defense that, Marcus Mariota was his quarterback for a few seasons, but Marcus Mariota then is better than Zach Wilson now because Zach Wilson's still a rookie. And the Jets are worse than that Titans team was. And then Tyler Kroft, also from the Jets. Sorry about my tangent about Corey Davis. Tyler Kroft, also worth looking at for the Jets. Because I think that there's still a big discussion of who their starting tight end is. I think Chris Henderson is like out of the picture completely. So I'd pick up Tyler Kroft if you're in a deep league, particularly Dynasty. Bills, Isaiah McKenzie for Dynasty, Marquez Stevenson for Dynasty. Panthers, I'm starting to say Terrace Marshall in any league because he just seems like an absolute stud. Chuba Hubbard, if you have Christian McCaffrey, you want the handcuff. Dolphins, Malcolm Brown. Titans, Des Fitzpatrick. Also keep an eye on that backfield. God forbid anything happens to Derrick Henry, but nothing will because he's built like Cyborg from the Justice League. Bucks, Jalen Darden and Tyler Johnson, if you are in Dynasty leagues. Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyrell Williams. Steelers, Kalen Ballage and Pat Freiermuth. Texans, Mark Ingram, and keep an eye on that receiving corps because, quite frankly, they have no one. Rams, Jake Funk, Xavier Jones, and now Sony Michel. Broncos, KJ Hamler still. He's had a touchdown every single week. Giants, David Sills, and if you have Saquon, Devontae Booker, or Corey Clement. Jaguars, Marvin Jones, James Robinson, Laviska Shenault. James Robinson because I know that this group is really obvious, but James Robinson more so because James Robinson is an RB20 talent, and he shouldn't have been viewed as anything less because ETN came onto the team, but ETN is now out. So all of the running snaps are going to James Robinson. If you have James Robinson, pick up Carlos Hyde because he will be his handcuff. And then Saints, Jameis Winston, Marquez Callaway, Lil Jordan Humphrey. Can't have a dude with that name not on this list. But that's going to do the recap for last week. I might have to refigure this out because that took way longer than I thought. Going into the next segment, we are going to talk about quarterback rankings for all 32 teams. And I'm not going to talk about every quarterback, but I'm going to, and I shouldn't have even called this the rankings. There's more like quarterback tiers for all 32 starting quarterbacks. I have left rookies off this list because we've only seen them for 2 preseason games. So I don't believe that that's enough to put them on this list anywhere. Regardless of talent, I just don't think that they've shown enough or done enough. But just want to break down my 4 categories. So you have elite. Does not matter what hole their team has on offense or defense or coaching, they will win games. Franchise is tier 2. Can overcome some obstacles, but not all, and make plays and win games by himself. Serviceable is tier 3. Needs the appropriate pieces and scheme around him to win games. That is our biggest category and might be time to move on. This is a category for has not shown that he could win or stay on the field. So yeah, let's get into it. First tier, we have elite: Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. I have, if you're watching on YouTube, pictures of Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Deshaun Watson on here. I think people are starting to be like, oh, Lamar's one-dimensional. Oh, the Ravens are getting it figured out. Oh, Lamar can't throw the ball. It doesn't matter to any of those points because Lamar Jackson has won 80% of his games and was an MVP year 2. And he's getting better in almost every single category that a quarterback can get better in. There should be absolutely no slander on this man. None. I mean, oh, he can't win from behind. Okay. Maybe if you could throw the ball, you'll have a better chance of winning from behind because you have more time on the clock. Now they're starting to do that with how they drafted. And it's not going to matter. Their team is good enough. They have until December to figure it out. It's not Lamar Jackson's fault. Then I have Kyler Murray. Why I have Kyler Murray in elite is because Cliff Kingsbury might be one of the worst head coaches in the NFL. We're going to talk about him later in a few minutes or later in the show. But Kyler Murray, since he's entered the league, has gotten better in every single – actually, if you look it up, he's gotten better in every single category you can ask a quarterback to get better in. Yeah, he has weapons around him. Yeah, he has a great offensive line. Yeah, they have a decent defense. But Kyler Murray makes plays. If you watch him, he does a lot by himself. Sure, he looks like Kermit the Frog when he runs, but he does make a lot of plays. And I think that if they don't make the playoffs this season, Cliff Kingsbury's gone. At first I was like, well, Kyler's got to win games. He's doing everything he can. They would have been 0-6 down the stretch if it wasn't for Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. And Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson may never play again. I have no idea what his future outlook is. But what I will say is he led the league in passing on a 4-win team. Or 5-win team. How many players in NFL history have done that? How many players have led the league in passing without a 1,000-yard receiver? This could be the hottest take I could throw out since the 3 episodes I've been on here, but I think Deshaun Watson is just as good as Patrick Mahomes. He's not as flashy. He's not on the TV with ESPN doing top 10 things, but every week like Patrick Mahomes is. But Deshaun Watson, he's a bad man, dude. That kid could do literally everything, and he is in the – I mean, they don't even have a coach, man. I mean, he's just in the worst situation imaginable. And yeah, that's my elite list. Let's go to franchise. So this is my franchise list: Matt Stafford, Ryan Tannehill, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott. I have, if you're watching on YouTube, pictures of Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, and Ryan Tannehill on the screen. Let's talk about Dak first. There's no question Dak's talent. I mean, the dude was on pace for 5,000 yards last season. He's a beast. He really, and if you are watching Hard Knocks, you are kind of seeing that Dak is the alpha male of that team. It's not Mike McCarthy, like at all. I think Mike McCarthy is actually kind of like the team's getting tired of Mike McCarthy. However, I have Dak on this list or on the screen because he is a candidate for regression, in my opinion. He can drop down to serviceable. And here's why. Dak Prescott is a lot like Tony Romo, and they dominate the regular season, and they dominate the NFC East. Tony Romo dominated the NFC East for a long time. Tony Romo is arguably one of the best regular season quarterbacks of all time. Dak Prescott has, I think, 1 playoff win in his career. And they just paid him over $100 and some million for one playoff win. This team is also insanely Dak dependent. I have on the record, if you are following the Pylon Cam on Twitter at Cam_Pylon, Dak Prescott I think will be hurt early this season. He just started playing sevens today. It's August 25th. When we're 1 day away from the start of the last week of preseason. If Dak Prescott goes down, this team is done. They are, I mean, who's going to lead them to the division championship? Ben DiNucci? I mean, hey, he might, but I don't think he will. Yeah, so I think Dak, if he can't win, if he stays healthy and can't win this division, he kind of goes, he drops a peg in my opinion. That offense, I mean, yeah, I've been kind of hard on the Cowboys and I don't even have them winning the division. It's not because of Dak, it's because of their defense, but because of the way that the media praises Dak and because of the way he just got paid, he needs to be ready to move to the elite category, and you need to beat elite teams to move to the elite category, and he does not do that. He does not do that. Justin Herbert, huge candidate to move up to elite. They basically rebuilt their entire offensive line. They have an all-pro center. I think they got an all-pro guard. And I really got to start writing these names down. But Justin Herbert shattered every rookie record behind the 32nd ranked offensive line, according to PFF, and missing a game. The kid is a real deal. And me and my brother, shout out Dominic, have been on Justin Herbert for he more than me, but we both are big on him coming out of college. We both had him kind of ranked up there with Joe Burrow. But yeah, I think that Justin Herbert is like a legitimate MVP candidate. And some people are like, oh, well, he has to play more. He has to do more. I mean, what he did with what he had last season is why I almost put him in elite already, because what he did with how bad that team was last season. I mean, he is the best quarterback ever to come into the league. Statistically, he is the best rookie quarterback ever. And he did it behind a 32nd ranked offensive line. Hey, he's special. I think he's going to be the reason why Chargers fans could go to sleep or put on their Chargers jerseys on Sundays and not have to think to themselves or send up a prayer. Dear Jesus, please don't let us lose in the last 2 minutes, because Justin Herbert's not going to let that happen. I don't think. And I have Ryan Tannehill on here. I have Ryan Tannehill as a candidate to move up because he keeps getting better since he's left Adam Gase. And in 2019, how many people thought the Titans were going to make the AFC Championship game? I didn't. And here they are in the playoffs ever since they got Ryan Tannehill. And that year they went to the playoffs, I'm pretty confident, I should have double-checked this, he didn't start right away. He came in and replaced Mariota. And then you give him an A.J. Brown, you give him Corey Davis, who is a very good two. Like, Corey Davis might be the best wide receiver two in the entire NFL. Well, he's up there. I don't want to say best. But, and then you give him a Derrick Henry where he can win a playoff game throwing 8 times. Ryan Tannehill, like, if he could take them to the AFC Championship this year, I think you got to put him in that, because their defense is bad. They signed Bud Dupree, who, in my opinion, was one of the most overlooked and non-talked about defensive signings in the offseason. Bud Dupree is a monster on Pittsburgh. Sure, he had the help of TJ Watt, but like, Bud Dupree is going to fill that. Like, the Titans lost games because they couldn't get to the quarterback. Bud Dupree is going to make that happen. Now, I think you need good corners to give, because of how fast-paced the NFL is and the average time to throw is 2.3 seconds. If you have corners who can stay on receivers for longer periods of time, it allows players like Bud Dupree or Chase Young or whoever, whichever edge rush or defensive lineman you want to put in that spot, more time to get to the quarterback. And if they're already getting to the quarterback in under 2.3 seconds, if they have 2.4 seconds, 2.5 seconds, they are going to get to the quarterback a lot, like at a very high success rate. or they're going to demand double teams. Now, I'm not saying Bud. I'm kind of just making a point about why you need good corners for your defensive line. But hey, anyway, Ryan Tannehill, candidate for progression. I think worst case he stays franchise. I don't see him dropping to serviceable unless Derrick Henry gets hurt and they put the ball in Ryan Tannehill's hands and he just like poops the bed. But I don't see that happening. And to go to the serviceable group, 8 players I want to talk about because this is a big list. But the list goes Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Daniel Jones, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Cam Newton, Sam Darnold, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, and Drew Lock. Drew Lock, you can argue after today, just got bumped down out of serviceable, but I think he's still a serviceable quarterback. I think he would beat Tyrod Taylor for the starting job of the Texans. Sure, I think he's now in that realm of like he's a bridge quarterback. He's not a franchise guy anymore. But anyway, I want to talk about these 4 first. We're going to start with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a serviceable quarterback coming off the bench. It is still to be determined if he's a serviceable quarterback as a starter. I think if he doesn't win this Washington team, the division title, because every time I look at Washington's roster, it gets better somehow. I just notice more things that they are so exceptional at and so good at. It really is Ryan Fitzpatrick's job. He will be the reason they lose games. Their offensive line last year was ranked 3rd, and they drafted Samuel Cosmi and made some other additions. He's going to be protected. He has the weapons. He has the running backs. He has the defense. Definitely has the defense. If they do not win games, it is because of Ryan. It is because of Ryan Fitzpatrick. And that to me, I think if Washington moves off of him after this year, he'll retire. He's not going to go. Nobody's going to want him because he's never been on a team this good. You can't tell me he's been on a team with a top 3 offensive line, a top 3 defense, and a Terry McLaurin and an Antonio Gibson ever in his career. Sure, he had Andre Johnson, but even Andre Johnson was like, dude, I don't know what we're getting from this guy every single Sunday. Could be 5 touchdowns, could be 5 picks. I have no idea. Then I have Kirk Cousins. Now, you could be saying there, why is Kirk Cousins on this list and why is he in serviceable, not franchise? Similar to Dak, being a good quarterback statistically only gets you so far. And Kirk Cousins can't even win on Monday night when people are watching. How do you ever expect him to win in the playoffs? Because Minnesota Miracle was Case Keenum, wasn't Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, I think, has won at most, off the top of my head, 2 Monday Night Football games. The Vikings are in win now mode. And Kirk Cousins has not played on bad Vikings teams. He's been on good Vikings teams. He's had Stephon Diggs. He's had Dalvin Cook. He's had Adam Thielen. And the dude can't win on Monday. I think the Vikings, if they don't make the playoffs this year or squeak into the wild card, they're going to be like, who wants Kirk Cousins? Because we can't win with him. And you put no. Yeah, someone will take Kirk Cousins. But I don't think if you want to win, you want Kirk Cousins. And then Cam Newton's on this list. Cam Newton's a huge candidate for regression, in my opinion. Because I don't even think he's going to start every game this season. I think he's going to lose his job to Mac Jones. And nobody wanted him. I mean, the Patriots got him on a minimum, basically the league minimum in 2020. Nobody wants him. I don't think anybody will want him because he needs to run the ball at quarterback to move down the field, or he needs to throw the ball 5 yards to move down the field. He did look pretty good in this last week's preseason game, but he's Cam Newton. He should look good in a preseason game. And then I have Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones could go either way, in my opinion. I am on the side of he's going to take that step, and the Giants have their franchise quarterback. But the offensive line scares me, and the fumbles and turnovers are still an issue. And he's someone who he's not elite, in my opinion, because he can't overcome every obstacle that's thrown at him. He's not franchised because he can't overcome. His rookie year, he did overcome most obstacles. But this past year, the offensive line and receivers stunk. And if he were elite, he would have overcame that. I mean, Deshaun Watson did, but I'm never, ever going to compare Deshaun Watson to Daniel Jones. I'm just saying, like, Daniel Jones could move up to franchise if he could because he has receivers now. He has his running back. If he could overcome this bad offensive line, he moves up to franchise, in my opinion. If he doesn't, he moves down to maybe time to move on. And then the next group of guys, we got Drew Lock, who he's gone. I mean, he just moved. He literally just got demoted today, so he's down. He's out of here. Tua could go either way. The Miami Dolphins have a ton of draft capital. Tua is starting to flash, but he may not be able to flash all season. He may not be able to maintain all season. And if they don't make the playoffs, Tua's gone, in my opinion, because the Miami Dolphins just went 10-6 with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua. Both playing bad. Well, actually, no. Ryan Fitzpatrick played very well on the Dolphins, and he did play the best ball of his career on the Dolphins. But it's year 16, I think, for Ryan Fitzpatrick. You need someone to not be like, I just don't believe Ryan Fitzpatrick at all. And I could be a hater for that, but I don't believe him. It did make no sense why they benched him for Tua, because he was hot on the Dolphins. He was very hot on the Dolphins. I really do think they benched him because they know Fitzpatrick's not the long-term answer and Tua is their guy, or they want to be their guy. They just need to see it, and they needed to test it last season, and they needed to just throw him into the trial by fire with Tua. But Tua, I think, is someone who goes either way. And then Sam Darnold, same thing, goes either way. I think he moves up to franchise because the kid has never, on top of never having receivers, he's never had a left tackle. Mekhi Becton was injured. Think how many games, if you're a Jets fan, comment below or at me on Twitter, how many games did Mekhi Becton miss last season? How many games did Adam Gase put Mekhi Becton in the game that didn't matter and made him and extended his injuries? I think Sam Darnold has the best receiving core of his career. He has one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in football, and he has the best offensive line he's ever seen. We don't care if nobody thinks the Panthers are going to the playoffs. We just need to see, can Sam Darnold play? Also, Sam Darnold is a top 5 youngest quarterback in the NFL, and he's going into his 4th season. The kid just turned 24, I think, maybe 25. And then Jalen Hurts. I am becoming more of a believer in Jalen Hurts. I'm a huge fan. No, I'm a huge fan of Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts to me is someone who's not talented enough to overcome the crap that the Philadelphia organization is going to throw at him. You have Jeffrey Lurie coming down to practice and telling Doug Peterson which plays to run. You have him leaking that Carson Wentz is a bad quarterback or a bad locker room guy, excuse me. You draft his successor without even telling Carson. I think it would have been better for Carson if they got one in free agency and were like, hey, this guy's just here if you get hurt, but you're a guy. They didn't say anything, and they drafted Jalen in the 2nd round. And they are an organization where if they do not believe in you, they will make it publicly known. I think Jalen Hurts is just being a cat, like just led to the slaughter. It's not, I think he will regress, not because of the player he is. It's because of the situation he is and how dysfunctional that franchise is. And they're going to have 3 first-round picks next year because Carson Wentz is coming back on that. On the trade with the Colts was conditional for that first-round pick for Carson Wentz. He just has to play 70% of snaps all season. And it's looking like he will. So there's a good chance they move off of Jalen Hurts next year, regardless of if it's Jalen Hurts' fault. So if you're an Eagles fan and you like Jalen Hurts, I'm sorry. I like Jalen Hurts too. I just think your franchise is going to ruin him. And then let's talk about the Monday night game. Or no. Losing myself. And then it may be time to move on. The last category. I have Ben Roethlisberger, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. Now, when I wrote this, I did have Jameis Winston as a progression candidate and Taysom Hill as a regression candidate, because for Taysom Hill to regress, you just have to lose a starting job. For Jameis, I didn't think there was any universe where he had the starting job, and I'm banking on the upside of you were coached by Sean Payton and you were coached by Drew Brees, essentially. And he got LASIK eye surgery, and he did lead the league in passing yards in 2019. So if Jameis can play, the Saints might not have to worry about drafting a quarterback. They do have Ian Book, if anything were to happen, but I think Jameis was a first-round pick. He could throw the ball. He just needs to not turn it over, and he looked good. He looked really good in that Saints game. But that's it for my quarterback tiers. Let me know in the comments or on Twitter if you disagree. And so now I left rookies off of the list because I wanted to talk about them in their own section. And rookies, to me, I think the media has their power rankings for the top 5 quarterbacks pretty set in stone based off the past 2 weeks. And they are Zach Wilson at 1. Change the slide. Zach Wilson at 1, Trey Lance at 2, Trevor Lawrence at 3, Justin Fields at 4, and Mac Jones at 5. I think Mac Jones is kind of creeping up the list because everybody's expectations were so low for him. However, I strongly disagree with this list for a lot of good reason. These kids have not played anybody yet. They haven't played first-string defenses yet. Trey Lance did get reps with the first-team offense, but I don't think they played an entire first-string defense yet. These are how the rookie quarterbacks have moved according to me. Just based off the past 2 weeks. So I have Mac Jones at 1, Trey Lance at 2, Justin Fields at 3, Trevor Lawrence at 4, and Zach Wilson at 5. I think that's how they look based off of week 2, after preseason week 2. But if I'm looking them as like who I want to be my franchise quarterback and ranking them that way, it would be Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. And we're going to talk about Zach Wilson pretty in depth right now. So this is why I'm keeping Zach Wilson at 5, despite the flashes he's shown throughout preseason. These are the traits that Zach Wilson has shown that he has, right? Accurate, mobile, a laser arm, and high IQ or fast read progression. These are the same exact traits that Baker Mayfield had coming out of the draft. People had Baker Mayfield. His accuracy is insane. He can move around. He's not Lamar Jackson, but he can move, and he's got a very strong arm. The Jets have played their first string offense against every game against second and third string defenses. So we're seeing the absolute maximum pretty much of this Jets offense against second and third string. So they Zach Wilson for second overall pick should be picking these teams apart. But why I bring up Baker Mayfield is because though they have different body molds, I want to talk about Baker Mayfield's stats and kind of make my first official Zach Wilson projection for the season based off of these, because I think they're in very, very similar situations, being that the Browns were the most dysfunctional organization forever. Not forever, but since like 2000. And the Jets are kind of creeping up on them in that spot. And the Browns are now a playoff contender, AFC Championship, Super Bowl contending team. So they are no longer in that realm of dysfunction. Baker Mayfield in 2018 had 6 wins and 7 losses, I think, as a starter. No. I think he had 6 wins and 7 losses as a starter. He had 27 touchdowns, 14 picks, a 63.8% completion percentage on 486 attempts. Their offensive line rank was second. Okay. That's important. The offensive line rank, because we're going to talk about that. In 2019, Baker Mayfield didn't improve in wins. He was 6-10, 22 touchdowns to 21 interceptions, a 59.4% completion percentage on 534 attempts, right? And why I'm bringing to add to the point of why I'm comparing Zach Wilson to Baker is they're both that savior player. Baker Mayfield was drafted number 1 overall to save the Browns. He came in, they gave him the keys to the city, they gave him the keys to the franchise. He had sway over the coaches, and they let him go, right? And when they gave him the reins in 2019 and said, yo, carry this offense, he regressed pretty marginally. And he led the league in picks or in turnover. Yeah, picks until last season, since entering the league. Of all quarterbacks who entered the league in 2018, going to 2020, Baker Mayfield led the league in interceptions, right? That offensive line was ranked 23rd in 2019. These are all according to PFF. In 2020, Baker Mayfield went to 11-5, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 62.5% completion percentage on 486 attempts. So Kevin Stefanski said, okay, Baker, I think your ceiling was year 1 in 2018. I am going to basically let you do that again. Their offensive line, the Browns' offensive line, was ranked first in 2020. And Baker Mayfield was basically able to recreate those stats. He didn't move. He didn't even progress. He dropped, well, he did progress. He dropped 6 turnovers, but he threw one less touchdown on the same amount of attempts and had a worse completion percentage, only by a percentage, but still. Going into 2021, finishing 2020, the Jets' offensive line is ranked 29th in the entire NFL. Going into 2021, it is ranked 22nd. One spot higher than that 2019 Browns team, right? I am going to project that Zach Wilson will roughly, this is a very rough projection. I'll give a more precise one later on, maybe on Twitter or something. Zach Wilson with our 20 touchdowns with 20 interceptions have a completion percentage of 60% on 450 attempts. Now, if he throws 530 times, his stats will look more like 20-20, still a 59% completion percentage, and win 4 games. And these are just stats about Zach Wilson. Let's talk about why I just don't believe in this kid, period. Because I am ready to be wrong on this, but I want to make my case clear while the hype on him is high. Because if I'm right, I don't want to be labeled, oh, you just waited until he panned out or until he busted to make your point. No, I'm making my point now while the hype around him is high. The Jets have 2 winning records since 2010. Like Baker Mayfield, he is expected to come in and save this franchise, right? This kid is coming from Utah. How many people live in Utah as a state? 5? Him being one of them and his 2 brothers and his girlfriend being the other 3? This kid is coming from the middle of nowhere, Utah. He went to BYU, which is a very small school, where he was a big fish in a little pond. Who else was a big fish in a little pond? Coming from North Dakota State, Carson Wentz. What happened to Carson Wentz when the media got to him? What happened to Carson Wentz when they drafted Jalen Hurts? He became the worst quarterback in the NFL. Because Zach Wilson is actually playing well, he is setting himself up more so for failure because of the fan base of New York City. And he's on the wrong side of New York because the Jets might be, besides the Eagles, the most delusional fan base in the entire NFL. He is raising the bar for himself. And if he could meet it, fantastic. I am wrong, and this is a huge waste of 10 minutes. But if I'm right, and he's raising this bar to this level where he will never be able to attain that against first-string defensive players, against a first-string defensive unit, this kid is going to implode. He's never faced media coverage like New York. The reason why Daniel Jones can even kind of survive is because he just acts like he's just Eli Manning. He did learn from Eli Manning, who came from Tennessee, a small country state where Eli Manning, every press conference, well, yep, I could do better. Zach Wilson looked like he lost his mom at the draft when he was taking pictures next to Micah Parsons and Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle. It looked like he was a little kid in a superstore looking for his mom. I wish I had the picture on the screen. It's not the talent I doubt about Zach Wilson. Can he survive New York City? Can he survive a dysfunctional franchise? Can he survive all of these things that are beyond his control off the football field? Because I don't think he can. And that's going to correlate to play on the football field. Look at Carson Wentz, right? I'm building this narrative now because I want to say it again. The hype on him is high. And he surprised me in week against Packers. You know, the last time the Jets beat the Packers in a regular season game? 2006. Do I think Zach Wilson could beat Aaron Rodgers in a regular season game? Not in a million years. I think a 45-year-old Aaron Rodgers still beats that Jets team. We're coming up on the hour, and I'm going to talk about. I'm going to try to keep this to 15 minutes. Might go over, but I'm going to talk about 10 players and coaches and GMs I have in the hot seat for 2021. And we'll start with 10, and that is Urban Meyer. Why I can't stand, I really was happy for Urban Meyer when he became the Jaguars head coach, because in my opinion, there's no better franchise or no better time to come into a franchise than right now, where you are drafting a generational quarterback and you have this young core of stud offensive players and you have to build defense. The Jaguars aren't going to win. You're kidding yourself if you think the Jaguars are going to be in the postseason before 3 years from now. You're kidding yourself. And Urban Meyer, it just seems like no matter what he does, he just is craving drama. And that's I feel like the worst thing you could have for a young team with a new quarterback. Why do you want the spotlight on this kid? Why did you make an imaginary quarterback competition between him and Gardner Minshew? Nobody believed for 1 second that Gardner Minshew would be the starter for the Jacksonville Jaguars week 1. And I get you want to make this change the culture of, oh, well, you have to earn it. It's not going to be given to you. Gardner Minshew would never beat Trevor. I love Gardner Minshew. I think they should trade him for a defensive piece or an offensive lineman, because that offensive line looks horrible. Granted, they might be the youngest offensive line in the entire NFL, but it just is really starting to piss me off that Urban Meyer is just is insane attention seeker. You don't need that much attention, Urban Meyer. It's hurting your franchise. And I just think that he's not on the hot seat yet. I kind of just wanted to rant about him, but I do think that Urban Meyer will put himself on the hot seat if he keeps up these antics. I would put a fire for him. If 1 was the lowest it could be and 5 was the highest, it would be a 1. And then I have next on this list, Mike McCarthy. I said it when we were talking about Dak. If you have been watching Hard Knocks, this team does not view Mike McCarthy as the alpha dog. Nobody views him. I don't even know if the Packers viewed Mike McCarthy as the alpha dog when they won the Super Bowl. This dude went into his basement, quote unquote, for a whole 2 seasons or 1 season so he could study analytics and get up with the curve. What does that mean, Mike McCarthy? This is a Dak-led franchise. This will be a Dak-led team. If they don't win this division, Mike McCarthy will be fired, in my opinion. I think they're done with him. I think he's losing the locker room, especially if they start to derail this season. I think he's losing it, and he will lose it if they go on a losing streak. The next player that I just realized I forgot to put a picture of, Jalen Hurts. And we kind of talked about Jalen Hurts pretty in depth about why I don't think he's going to succeed, and has nothing to do with the player he is. I just don't think he'll be able to keep up with the franchise. I think that they have 3 first-rounders. They destroyed Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz. Now that I'm kind of reading into it and reading the reports about Jeffrey Lurie coming into Eagles practice and, hey, run this play, run that play. Jeffrey Lurie, you are the worst owner and maybe the worst owner in the NFL. You completely derailed your franchise 3 years removed from a Super Bowl win. Not even a Super Bowl appearance. You won that Super Bowl and you have demolished your franchise. You have actually forced them into probably the fastest rebuild since the Super Bowl win, maybe in NFL history. So it's not really that Jalen Hurts is on the hot seat. I just think I have him, quote, on the hot seat because they will move off of him, whether or not it's his fault or not. And the next team that I'm actually very excited that they're on this list because they have been freeloading for the past 20 years. That team, maybe even longer, is the Green Bay Packers organization. If you're a Packers fan, you are so comfortable and used to just coming into the season, winning the NFC North, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, the Lombardi, Lambeau. You win, you win, you win, you win, you win. And it's not because your front office, nor should it be solely because of your front office, but your front office should have a big hand in that. However, no king can rule forever. And the Packers are about 2 years away, in my opinion, from being possibly the bottom of the NFC North, depending on how the Lions shape out under this new regime. But players that could potentially leave between 2022 and 2023. Aaron Rodgers. Or some of these players will leave. Some of them potentially will leave. Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, Robert Tonyan, Kevin King, Marcus Valdez-Scantling, Devin Funchess, Alan Lazard, Za'Darius Smith, and Preston Smith. That's pretty much your entire core of your team. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the core of your offense. He really is the core of your offense. And I'd argue he's a core of your defense too, because your defense cannot stuff a run to save their life. And if you can't stop the run, we saw how bad that, I mean, the Patriots had no quarterback, but if you can't stop a run, you can't win games. You can't, because the NFL is a league of explosiveness. It is a league where explosive plays win games. That's why the Chiefs are so good. That's why the Bills are so good. If you can't control the clock or if you can't be explosive, you are not going to win games. And I really am happy about this, not because I hate the Packers. I actually really like the Packers franchise. I hate their front office because they do not care about their players in the slightest. They don't care about their players at all. And Aaron Rodgers talked about this. He said that front office relations with veteran players is one thing they need to work on as a franchise. And that was the nicest way he could have said it. They're so lucky that they have had a Brett Favre and an Aaron Rodgers for the past so many decades that they could just carry this franchise and the front office didn't have to do a thing about it. Because here's the other thing. Think about the players. Why does no player want to go to Detroit? Because it's a crappy city. Why does no player want to go play in Green Bay? Because it's cold all year round. Have you seen the fans at Packers games just in the stands and what they're wearing? First of all, you got to wear a cheese head. Second of all, you got to wear about 3 coats and 5 scarves. And as a player, you get to wear 1 Under Armour and maybe a gator. The Packers have shown the past few years they are either choose not to draft well because they hate their players or they can't draft. And I expect the Packers to be very mediocre in the next few years. And I don't wish it upon the franchise, the fans, or the players, but I am so happy that it's going to happen in that front office because that is the most arrogant, egotistical front office maybe in the entire NFL. Next on my list, it's the first head coach GM tandem because I think you can't separate them, and that is Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin. Let's start with Zach Taylor. In the NFL, you could rebuild a team pretty quickly, depending on how good you are at it. Probably do it in 3 years. I think at most 4 or 5 years. It's not the MLB. It doesn't take 9 years to rebuild a team. It doesn't take 10 years to rebuild a team. Zach Taylor has had more than enough weapons to win games. And I'm not asking him to win that division, but his record is simply just unacceptable. He has, I think, 7 wins in 2 seasons. He's going into his third year, I believe. He has 6 wins in 2 seasons. It's not all his fault though. Like Joe Judge, Brian Flores, all of these other coaches can come in. Kevin Stefanski can come in and win 6 games immediately. No matter who is on your team, they can win it just like that. Zach Taylor has 6 wins in 2 years. Part of that is Duke Tobin's fault. Because that Duke Tobin is the reason Zach Taylor is the Bengals head coach. And you could be sitting there and thinking, well, surely winning 6 games in 2 seasons isn't the end of the world. But with how fast-paced the NFL is and how explosive that offense could be if they drafted well or played the free agency market well, this could easily be an 8-9 win team outside of their division. Because AFC North is arguably the best division in football. Arguably. And these 2 gentlemen on the screen could be responsible for the murder of one of the most promising quarterback careers we have seen in recent memory. How you could look Joe Burrow in the eye and it's like spoiling your kids, man. I don't have kids, but if you're listening, you might have kids. If your kid asks for a piece of cake for breakfast, you are going to say no. If Joe Burrow with one knee asks for Jamar Chase, you should say no. Because now you failed to do the background check and he might go to jail. He might get suspended. Then what? Now Joe Burrow is not protected and he doesn't have this weapon that he wanted so bad. If Jamar Chase, 1, doesn't get arrested first and foremost, but 2, does not have roughly 100 catches, 10 touchdowns, and 1,000 yards. I'm not saying he's got to hit all of them, but if he hits one of those metrics and is slightly below in the others, because they have T. Higgins and they have Tyler Boyd and they have Joe Mixon, and Joe Burrow doesn't play more than 15 games, because now that they're 17-game format, if they know they're not making the playoffs and they have Joe Burrow who already is coming off injury, they might just be like, all right, Joe, just sit it out. We're not going to try to lose like the Eagles, but we want to keep you safe. They both should be fired. Duke Tobin should be fired. And I don't know if Zach Taylor is responsible or fought against drafting Jamar Chase. But if he's not, he's equally as guilty in this murder. And I am labeling it as a murder because that's what it is. This poor kid is horrified to move in training camp. Not in preseason. He hasn't played preseason. He's horrified to move in training camp. How do you think he's going to play in a regular season game where it matters? Shame on you, Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor. Shame on you. The next player is someone I'm pretty excited about. And I forgot no, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a player I forgot the picture of him in here, but Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins is on the hot seat. And I think Kirk Cousins is on the hot seat because if this Vikings team can win 10 games, but loses a Monday night and against winning teams, they will move off of Kirk Cousins because they are good enough where they just need a quarterback who can win in primetime. And there are players on the market that can do that. Deshaun Watson can win in primetime if he plays. Aaron Rodgers, if they have a good enough offer and want to spend that much. Well, actually, no, Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be on the table because he's in their division, but they might look to the draft a quarterback. I don't know. They have Kellen Mond. Maybe he can win games. I don't know if he's good enough to win games. He's a 3rd-round pick, or 4th-round pick, but I think if Kirk Cousins fails to win big games, it's time to start exercising your options because that Vikings team is good enough. They're good enough to win 10 games. They were good enough to win 10 games last year if everybody didn't get hurt. Kirk Cousins, man. But the next player is someone who's on the hot seat because, I think it's put up or shut up time for them. And, that kind of is for most of these players, especially the quarterbacks on this list. And most of them, I think, if not all of them, are quarterbacks on this list that are players. Sam Darnold. And I don't think that all of their chips are, I think they're putting all their chips in the Sam Darnold basket because they could have drafted Justin Fields at 8 if they really were uncertain about Sam Darnold, and they wouldn't have traded Teddy Bridgewater after getting Sam Darnold if they weren't certain about Sam Darnold. I think that this is the best system Sam Darnold has been in ever, including college. I think that Sam Darnold will be more than serviceable on offense. He's entering year 4. And I think that since Josh Allen exists, people have concrete set in stone this narrative of you need to take a year 3 leap. And Sam Darnold is going into year 4, so he's kind of past that window. But because he's so young, I think a lot of teams are willing to gamble on him. And let's not forget that this kid was coached by Adam Gase, who can't even get hired by a high school. Ryan Tannehill went from being a decent quarterback in Miami to, according to his team, top 10 in the entire NFL. And nobody would have knew if he stayed in Miami. We would have never saw that if he stayed in Miami. Miami wouldn't be a potential superpower if Adam Gase was still there. Adam Gase might be the biggest cancer in modern history to professional football. And the next guy I have on this list is someone who I think might be the biggest loser in the NFL and will be fired at the end of the season. And if you've been listening to this list and you're thinking of one person, one tandem in particular, I promise you they're coming up, but it's not this guy. Cliff Kingsbury. This dude might be the biggest fraud of an NFL head coach in recent memory. I would say Adam Gase is definitely the biggest fraud, but this dude is up there. The Cardinals were literally one pass away from going 0-6 down the stretch. One pass away. And it's not Kyler Murray's fault. It's not DeAndre Hopkins' fault. It's not really the defense's fault. This dude cannot coach. And newsflash, or if you haven't noticed or just don't know, couldn't coach at college either. Who's the best quarterback in the NFL? Leave a comment on who you think it is. 90% of you are going to say Patrick Mahomes. He coached Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. He didn't win there either. Sure, Patrick Mahomes isn't as good as he is now when he was at Texas Tech, but he still was physically as gifted as he was. And we just watched Kevin Stefanski go 11-5 with Baker Mayfield, who's not nearly as gifted physically as Patrick Mahomes or Kyler Murray. And that's not a knock at Baker Mayfield. You are who you are. God made you fearfully and wonderfully made. And you got to live with that. And you got to play to that ceiling. And you got to give it 100%. But this NFC West is no cakewalk. They would win any other division based off the talent they have. He's going to get fired. He's not going to win this year. They're not going to make the playoffs. And it's not because of the team. That defense is so young and it's getting better. And now they have JJ Watt, who's a locker room guy for these young guys. They're going to get better, but it's not going to be because of him. They're not going to win. Cliff Kingsbury will never outcoach someone. He will never do it. He never has done it since his time as being a head coach. And then let's go to the next duo of biggest morons I think that could ever grace the NFL. And that is Mike Mayock and John Gruden. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You are in the most competitive division. You have the third best quarterback in the division, who's not bad. That's a very talented division. Derek Carr is a very good quarterback. What's your plan? Are you trying to be cute and be the Browns and have a cool duo running back tandem without the offensive line? Are you trying to scheme for Derek Carr to be this elite quarterback? You can't draft, and I would argue you can't coach. You got to fire your defensive coordinator halfway through the season. It's just dysfunction. There's so much dysfunction, and it stems from these two. And I would argue I should have the owner on this list because for whatever reason, he had a hand in, hey, John Gruden for 10 years. Good idea. Guaranteed 10 years. What do you want him to rebuild halfway through? Like, for first 5 years, let's give it a go. The next 5 years, let's rebuild. Mike Mayock will be fired at the end of the season. No question. John Gruden, because of that contract, he might have a little more grace period, but I have no idea what they're doing. Not a clue. I don't even think Josh Jacobs is going to want to re-sign with them. And if you're a fantasy player and you're listening to this, Josh Jacobs isn't going to re-sign, and you know who's going to be aggressive to go get him? In my theory, the Buffalo Bills. Imagine Josh Jacobs, runner-up for Offensive Rookie of the Year to Kyler Murray, behind that Bills offensive line, getting all the touches with Devin Singletary to compliment, who's not a bad compliment. You'll move off Zach Moss. Unless the Raiders throw a bag at Josh Jacobs, and I think Josh Jacobs is the type of player where I think he wants to win more than he wants to get paid, because he will get paid eventually. And the Bills are talk about not having dysfunction in a successful rebuild, the Buffalo Bills, because they took a potential bust in Josh Allen. Because if you were on this train of, I thought Josh Allen was good coming out of college, you're lying. You are lying to yourself, and you are lying to everybody else, because after year 1, you definitely hopped off of that train. After year 2, you for sure hopped off of that train. And after year 3, you kind of came back and were like, I was right. And then the number one player I have in the hot seat, according to the media, and I'm quoting the media because this is probably the most scrutinized draft pick of all time. And I think that this organization as a whole is way more patient than the media wants to give them credit, historically, especially with their quarterbacks. Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones might be the most hated, scrutinized pick at number 6 of all time. And I'm so curious because Bruce Arians has said they were drafting Daniel Jones if he fell to them in the first. Would it have been as frowned upon as a pick if they were 2 picks behind? This is put up or shut up here for Daniel Jones, no matter what. I think that this Giants team is good enough where they won't be in range to draft a quarterback in the top 10. However, they have the capital to move up. And I think that everybody is rooting for this kid to fail. Everybody has been rooting for this kid that fail. A quarterback out of Duke, drafted 6 overall, blah, 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 blah. I think that, Baker Mayfield's on the record saying that, you drafted him number 6, and people forget you have to win games. And some people just overthink it. Nobody expected Baker Mayfield to be drafted number 1 overall. You had Saquon Barkley coming out of that draft. You had Myles Garrett coming out of that draft, I think. You had Quentin Nelson coming out of that draft. You had Josh Allen coming out of that draft. You had Sam Darnold coming out of that draft. And not a single analyst had Baker out number 1. Not a single analyst. And I think if Kevin Stefanski was the head coach at that time in 2018, he was not drafting Baker Mayfield. I do think he would have taken – honestly, I think he would have took Sam Darnold. Frankly. But I think Daniel Jones is definitely in the hot seat. I think he's going to play his way out of it. This is a kid where we've talked about it before, and if you are following the podcast for the past few episodes, you know that I am someone who believes in this Giants team and believes in Daniel Jones and think he's gotten he hasn't had a fair go at it. But I'm just going to bring these stats up again for the new listeners. In the 12 games that Daniel Jones has played with Saquon Barkley, he was on pace in a 16-game season for 4,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. If he can throw, which I think he will, around 36 to 3,800 yards, 30 touchdowns, and under 10 picks and under 5 fumbles, I don't even think he's going to be in any conversation of being a franchise quarterback. I think that those numbers put it to rest. I don't think he has to win the division to put. A lot of people are saying Daniel Jones can only get off the hot seat if he wins the division. And I think that is stupid because who won the division last year? The Washington football team. Who has Daniel Jones beat more in his career than any other team? The Washington football team. Daniel Jones has played his best professional game against the Washington football team. He had 5 touchdowns against the Washington football team. He's 4-0 against the Washington football team. If he loses on an inferior team to a superior team, that's not his fault. If he puts up 30 touchdowns and has 10 total turnovers along with, and I'm talking about throwing touchdowns. I didn't even mention his rushing upside. If you're a fantasy player, is so overlooked, man. The kid led the Giants in rushing until about week 10. And I mean pure rushing over Wayne Gallman, Devontae Freeman, all of those running backs. He had more rushing yards than them. If you really want to know my opinion of why I think Daniel Jones will be good, and it's something that he can do, but it's going to be tough. If you watch any Giants game, and if you watch any highlight of Daniel Jones or thing about Daniel Jones, he has this tendency to start drifting out of the pocket. And every single time he gets sacked, he turns to run a 1/10 of a second too late. If he would just start running, the dude has insane straight line speed. He's faster than Lamar Jackson in a straight line. That's how he got dubbed Vanilla Vic. If he would just run, knowing how bad his offensive line is, and if he just can realize, okay, they're not going to separate before I get sacked. I mean, I'm asking a lot of them, but if he can move quicker than he is, and I mean a split seconds quicker, he will take way less sacks, he will have way less fumbles, and he will have way less interceptions. And the kid is tough. He's a tough kid. He's played through multiple injuries. He came back his senior year in Duke with a broken collarbone after 2 or 3 weeks. He is a competitor. And this kid, why I will die on this post, is because he has not had a fair shot at it. And I don't like putting people to bed as writing him off as someone who hasn't had a fair shake at it. And I think he's one of them. But this is the longest podcast episode yet. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. I have gotten way more excited about doing this. I have loved doing it. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. If you're watching on YouTube, give me a like, comment, subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, if you're listening on Google Podcasts or whatever the heck the platform is called, give me a 5-star rating. If you didn't like what I said on this podcast and you're watching on YouTube, give me a thumbs down. Tell me what I could do better. Tell me what I said that you think I'm an idiot for saying. Follow me on Twitter at @cam_pylon. Follow me on Instagram at Pylon Cam. If you are one of my boys out there listening to this podcast and you know someone who is a digital graphics designer or a video editor or can help your boy out make these podcasts better, shoot him my social media stuff, not my real stuff. If you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, at Mike Frisella for both, MikeForCella. But that's going to wrap it up for Pylon Cam episode 3. I'll see you next week with another recap, and we'll talk about division standings of what I think they're going to look like before week 1. And I'm not going to go through all the schedule breakdowns. But also episode 4 next week, huge special guests coming on. If you like the NFC East and you are a fan of the teams in the NFC East, do not miss this episode. Gonna have a special guest. He has a very popular podcast. He's a very popular content creator. He's very popular on Twitter. Do not miss next week. But that's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for the show. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next week. Peace.